Creepy Encounters. Number 1. Cashew. Shortly after I turned 18, back in the early 2000s, I got a job at the local movie rental place to help pay for my college. I worked there for about 2 years, and during that time had been promoted to hold keys to the store and open and close the registers. This also meant that I was occasionally working by myself for short periods of time. One such morning I was going through the morning procedures and putting returned movies back on the shelves. I was accustomed to greeting every customer no matter what, not only as a friendly gesture but as a part of the loss prevention protocol. Anyway, this particular morning I was taking the movie cart around and reshelving the movies, and I heard the door ding on the other side of the store, so I greet whoever it is with my voice raised, "Hi, how are you today?" Normally, they would give a reply back, but I didn't get one this time. So I'm looking between the shelves for the person that came in, and I see a middle-aged, balding man looking around. He seemed normal at first, but didn't really say anything when I asked him the next 2 times if he needed help. He pretty much ignored me. So I went about my business while keeping my eye on him. He was starting to make me nervous because he wasn't really looking at anything, just kind of making it look like he was looking at what was in front of him when his attention was focused elsewhere, seemingly at the ceiling. So I decided to give it one more try to let him know that I'm wondering what he's doing. "Can I help you find anything?" I asked as I walked past him to put a movie away. At this point, he'd been in the store nearly 20 minutes. He responded in such a way that made it clear that there was something off in his mind. Facing me but with his eyes averted from my face, he says in a startling loud drawling voice, "Oh, you know, just browsing." So I politely said, "Okay, just let me know if I can help you with anything," and went about my duties. He left shortly after this, at which point I let out a sigh of relief. A few days went by and I was opening by myself again. I went to start shelving the movies when the door dinged, and I again turned to greet whoever it was when I saw the same guy beelining it straight at me. I kind of panicked a little but stood my ground, and when he got right up to me, seriously so close I leaned back away from him, he lifted an open can of nuts and offered, "Cashew?" No, thank you," I said. I asked if I could help him find anything, and he didn't answer, and he went to the start of the wall where the movies that started with it were located, which was just a few feet to the left of where I was putting up the B or C movies. He was very obviously pretending to look at movie boxes by picking them up and flipping them over and then putting them back. He continued this and shuffled along behind me as I moved down the wall. After a few minutes of this, I got uncomfortable and took the cart to the front counter, at which point he left the store. A few customers came and went, and I went back to shelving the movies. When I was around the M area of the movie wall, Cashew guy came back and continued his pretend perusal of the movie boxes, always just a few feet to left of me. So, in the next area of the store, there were shelves that went a bit higher than the rest, and on the very top shelf, there were softcore porn movies. There was also a back room that contained the hard stuff, but I only went in that room one time right before I quit just to see what it was like. Anyway, I was shelving the movies with Cashew guy near me, not saying anything to me until I get to softcore section. He reached for one of the boxes at the top, which made me shudder, and says to me in his loud, strange voice, "I bet you have one of those big football player boyfriends." Thoroughly creeped out and disgusted, I go straight to the front counter, and another male customer walks in. This guy finds what he's looking for and goes to the register. I whispered to this guy that there was a man bothering me, and I asked if he would stay until the guy leaves. He shrugged and just kind of stood by the door awkwardly until Cashew guy walked out. I thanked the guy, and he left. I went back to the shelves, and not 5 minutes later, Cashew guy came back and again tried to engage me in an awkward conversation. I went to the front counter and called my mom. She and my sister were out getting lunch, so I told her what was going on, and they brought me something to eat. As soon as I picked up the phone, he left the store. He didn't come back that day. Next door to the movie place was an electronics store that was run by a very nice and talkative man, Mr. Moon, and his wife. I never spoke to his wife, but I knew English wasn't her first language. Mr. Moon would come over and use our shrink-wrap machine and talk and make us laugh. One evening after my encounter with the strange man, Mr. Moon came in more serious than normal and warned us about a man that had come in while his wife was working alone and he was out getting food. The man was walking around picking things up and putting them back down in such a way that made Mrs. Moon uncomfortable. I knew who it was right away. After a while, Mrs. Moon asked if he was going to purchase something, and he picked up a random house phone and asked how much it was. She told him, and he got upset at the price. He took it to the counter anyway, and when she rang him up, he tried to pay with a crumpled-up check from his pocket. She refused to accept the check and he got angry, so she called Mr. Moon to come back and handle the situation. Mr. Moon told the man that the check was suspicious and they normally wouldn't accept it as payment. Mr. Moon understood that there was something off with this guy and agreed to accept the check on a condition that the man give a phone number where he could be reached. He told him that if the check bounced, he was going to call him, and the man would have to cover the cost of it all. The man agreed, but Mr. Moon knew it was a bad deal all the way around. He said that after the man left the store, he went and stood in the parking lot and just stared up at the sky for about 10 minutes. I figured by his description that it was the same man who had been bothering me. One day not long after the above, I go to the movie store to pick up my paycheck and the girl working tells me some man came in asking about me. She said he seemed off, and she said she knew he was talking about me when he referenced my curly hair. It gave me the creeps, but I personally never saw the guy again. I found out why when a few days later Mr. Moon came in saying that, unsurprisingly, the check the man had paid with bounced. He called the number the man gave him a few times and talked to the man on the phone. Each time getting nowhere in the conversation, Mr. Moon did a pretty good impersonation of the startlingly loud drawling voice. Oh yeah, you know, okay. Anyway, he called one more time, and a woman answered. When Mr. Moon explained the situation, the woman said, I'm his mother, he's not here anymore, I had him committed, and the hospital picked him up this morning. Number 2. If that van had caught up to me. It was July 2008. We had just installed high-speed internet at an impressive 5 MB section. Harry Potter 6 was deferred another year. Justin Bieber was about to make his big break with One Time and One, thousands of miles away, was living life in rural Western Canada. The town I lived in could not even be called that. It was a settlement of perhaps 24 acreages clustered together near a lake, and boasted just an elementary school with grades kindergarten through grade 5, and no stores. On this particular day, I was at that school playground alone, swinging and pondering life. None of my friends were around, but the solitude never bothered me. I was perfectly content, swinging and pondering life, daydreaming as I often did. That is when I noticed the van behind me. It was your classic creepy van, older, large, and boxy, white generic van. And what struck me as odd was how slow the van was driving. It could not have been driving faster than 10 kilometers per hour. Still swinging, I craned my neck and watched this van slowly creep along and then out of my line of vision. I thought that was the end of it when, a few minutes later, along comes the van again, ever slow, and this time, driving on the road in front of the park. The best way to vision where I was is that of a square. Road wraps completely around the playground, which is situated on a slight hill. I watched the van creep along, turn left and out of sight. There were trees and houses obstructing my view, and back behind me it came creeping along, ever slow and present. As I watched it disappear for the second time, I recalled an incident that took place just 2 months prior. In the nearby town where I was attending school, a few kids in the grade below mine had been approached by a man as they walked home from school, who offered them candy. He had allegedly been driving a white van. School officials had urged us to stay very vigilant. I began to run across the field, determined to beat the van to that road. Don't panic, I told myself. It's probably not the same guy. And that is when the idea hit me. Oh, the idiotic, dangerously foolish idea hit me. I was going to hide myself in a nearby bush and, as the van crept by, I would obtain its license plate and give it to the police. It would be too easy. 12-year-old self, what were you thinking? I wasn't thinking, because I did just that. I hid in the bushes. And I waited. And waited. I waited to no avail. And as I waited, the logical part of my brain kicked in. This was an extremely lonely, well-concealed spot of land. Maybe, just maybe, trying to obtain this license plate was not a smart idea. I suddenly wanted very much not to be in that isolated bush. Abandoning my attempts at being Nancy Drew, I began the journey home with a sense of urgency. As I walked along the road, a dirt pavement, I took in my surroundings and saw no van. Perhaps it had left the area, I thought hopefully. I turned right, away from the school and playground, and began to walk towards my house. Safety lay just beyond the hairpin turn of a road that I was jaunting along. A loud screeching of tires came into my ear canal. I turned slightly and saw it, the white van. Where it came from, I did not know. What I did know was that I was extremely isolated and that it was speeding towards me. That is when the lizard brain took over. I no longer thought. I ran. I was no longer a whole being, my sole purpose was to run. I can still feel my sweaty feet sliding around in my sandals, still see my pink skirt frantically trying to keep up with still hear those squealing tires. I flung myself down the hill. At the foot of it lay my house, my lifeline. Out of the corner of my eye I saw the van for the last time. It was haphazardly turning left and away from me. The next thing I knew, I was standing at the family deep freeze, a red freezy in my hand. Vaguely I heard a faint voice, miles away. I was breathing heavily, hyperventilating really. What happened? What happened? My dad's face was white as a ghost. A hardened man, he looked truly afraid. I spat out the story and burst into tears. My dad hugged me. "You're safe with Daddy," he assured me. Then he left, determined to find this van. As he was gone, I ran throughout the house, locking the doors. When Dad returned, he told me he had seen no van, it had disappeared into the afternoon sun. Dad phoned the police anyway, and he stressed the similarities between what happened to me to the reports of what happened to my schoolmates. Unfortunately, the police never came to talk me. I don't think they really cared. I stayed in the house for the next few days, afraid to venture out. As the days wore on, I regained my confidence to return to the park, and life went on. I never did see that van again. I still shudder to think about what may have happened, all those years ago, if I had let that van catch up to me. Thank you for watching and listening to this video. If you would, go ahead and give that like button a smack and the subscribe button a smash for more videos. Smack and smash. See ya.